Hey, welcome. This is Sig with Fish Out Loud. I've got a special guest today here, an old friend of mine, Mr. Paul Elias, who, if you don't know who Mr. Elias is, he's 1982 Bassmaster Classic World Champion. But not only that, he has the all-time 20 fish record of 132 and a half pounds. You divide that by 20, okay? If you love throwing an Alabama rig, you got to thank Paul because he came in with over 104 pounds over 4 days using the Alabama, which changed the way we fish when it comes to using these large rigs. Okay, I've got Calvin and I've got Jason on the line too from South Africa, who made it to the Bassmaster Team World Championship here on the Harris Chain. And Paul is going to share some of his wisdom that he's gained over the years, not only fishing Florida, not only fishing the Harris Chain, but just some wisdom that these two young gentlemen can get when they have fished this championship. So with that, Paul, why don't you say a hello a little bit and start talking about your experience, and then I'm going to have Jason, Calvin, just raise your hand and jump in here at any time. Okay, Paul?
Yeah, I don't know why my monitor won't come back up again, but it's still saying this meeting's being recorded, but I can't see anybody. But
we can see you.
I, okay, well, I'm glad to help you guys out. I hope y'all can have a good event there, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you have and help you in any way I can. I've fished the Harris Chain several times. And of course, the time of year you're going there, I feel like is a really strong month in Florida. So the fish should be really active, and there should be a really good bite going on.
First of all, lovely to meet you, Mr. Elias. It's a very big privilege of ours to be meeting with you. I say face to face in modern day term. So thank you for taking the time, Mr. Taylor, for taking the time out of your day to meet with us. Just first question that I have off the bat, to give you a bit of background, we've got 3 days of practice on the Harris Chain, and it's an enormous body of water to cover in 3 days. So if we could maybe ask you, what would your approach be, never having fished the Harris Chain and only able to have spoken to people, maybe watched a couple of YouTube videos like we have, what would your approach be coming into
my approach there I would go probably start on Lake Dora on that chain. It's one of the smaller lakes, and it's the lake that's got the most color, and it produces some really big fish. And I would probably lean on a chatterbait pretty strong until something told me to change. A chatterbait and a square bill crankbait, and I would just start covering ground around the eelgrass and the patches of other kind of grass out in front of the hay grass. So that would be my main approach, and it would really surprise me if that didn't work.
Okay, so when you say color, do you mean the water or the vegetation around the environment?
The color of the water on that lake is quite different than the rest of the lakes. It's got more of a fertilized kind of greenish look to it, than greenish brown than most of the other lakes.
Yeah, I can verify that. I like the Lake Dora area because of the color of that water. It is different than the other lakes. Now there's three kind of, I don't know, three bodies to that lake or three parts to that lake. Do you like one favorite than the other?
I prefer, there's one area, I guess, when you first come into that lake, the if you just turned right out of the Dora Canal and went to if you went down that shoreline, it's going to make a big pocket to the right, and that point that is straight across I would say I guess it's the south point of that pocket. I would start on that point and work my way down into that pocket. But that, as far as that section of the lake, that's the main area that I like on that section of the lake. But if you go south on that lake, I guess would be southeast maybe, toward where the lake narrows down to form the next section of lake. I like that second area. I spent a lot of time in that area, and then of course you have the lower end of Dora, which goes into Beauclair, and those two sections are is where I spend most of my time on that lake. So,
to reiterate what Paul was saying is, and I can show that to you a little bit later here, but when you first get into Dora, you take that right, head down, and then that point to the south. When I fished there in August, not knowing anything about the Harris chain, but the first day of the tournament, I finally made it to that was one of my spots to stop. And I counted 11 boats off of that point, just out from the bank, fishing the grass, and they were catching them. Nothing big. I didn't see anything big being caught. That adds validation to what Paul just said. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys can, as far as this open that's starting this week there, it will be, I think the final day will be televised on Saturday. Are y'all able to get that feed or no?
We should be able to.
Yeah, you should be able to.
Yeah.
This weekend, the Bassmaster Open is on the Harris chain.
We'll be able to get the footage. Yeah.
I think they'll be televising that final day. I don't know if they televise Friday or not, but I know they do Saturday on FS1. But that's going to tell you a lot about where most of the guys are, where the bigger fish are coming from. The guys are doing really good. I think that's the top 10 day. So you'll know what lakes are producing, what lakes aren't. But I would say it would surprise me if there's not somebody on Dora in that top 10. But now the other lake that kind of throws a hitch into everything on the Harris chain is Apopka. And it's come on strong the last few years, but it's a really nightmare to get to. As far as, I mean, it takes about 45 minutes to 55 minutes to run to the lock that you would have to lock through into Apopka. Plus, it's a very small lock, and it can only lock like, I think, 5 or 6 boats at a time. So it makes it a very difficult run. You would really have to be on the fish, have a lot of confidence in that lake to catch them in a couple of hours. But that lake is probably producing the heaviest stringers out on the whole chain. So,
okay.
With that being said, I would, if it were me, I would do my best to locate fish on one of the other lakes.
Of course.
Yes.
Type of that in the practice days, the fish will, given the time of year, it's December, the fish will be moving up, and if it gets a bit colder, they might go off. But day 1, 2, and 3 practice days, we find fish on a pattern. Is it generally speaking on a pattern that will continue for the next couple of days, or is it something that will be changing?
Yeah,
for a long?
I don't think it would change unless some kind of major front came through, and normally Florida doesn't really have down around that area, it's not going to have much of a cold front probably until December or so. But I mean, and Florida, if you have a cold front, the fish react to it pretty bad. But normally you can just break out a flipping stick and just go to the nearest heavy cover, which on door would probably be hay, uh, or either hay or cattails. So, you might want to change from a chatterbait and a square bill to flipping some kind of crawfish or something in thicker grass close to where you were locating fish.
Hey, Paul, what colors do you like when it comes to chatterbait, square bill, and also flipping a worm or a jig? What colors do you like?
Okay, on the chatterbait, my favorite color on a chatterbait is called a gizzard shad color, and it's basically a kind of an off-white with some gray and green in it. But I think the color on it is called gizzard shad.
Yes.
And I usually throw a 3/8, and if I'm not throwing that color, I usually throw black and blue.
Okay.
What
Those are
about
my two favorite colors.
what about when you're throwing a worm, or are you throwing a worm, or are you throwing a jig, or are you throwing both, and what color?
That time of year, I would do both, but it's hard to beat black and blue in Florida. So if I'm flipping, I'm usually going to be flipping a black and blue crawfish or a black and blue jig with the black and blue crawl on it. And as far as the square bill goes, I would throw something like a sexy shad, something with chartreuse in it. Would be my preference.
Awesome. All right. Any other questions?
I think yes. Go for it, Calvin.
So when you're off flipping, your go-to, would you line choice? Your go-to line choice, would it be straight braid? Are you tying on a lead, straight fluoro?
I would use braid. I would use straight braid. I would go with like a 40 to 50 pound test braid, and you're not gonna have that thicker stuff to penetrate on most of that stuff. You probably get away with a 1/2 ounce weight, but I would have both rigged. I'd have a 1/2 ounce and a 1 ounce probably rigged to flip with.
We generally find here in SA, if the structure is not as thick, the 1/2 ounce gives that bait a bit of better action. So
yeah, and the water's going to be pretty shallow. The stuff that you're flipping is going to be pretty shallow. The only reason you need to go heavier is if you just have to break through.
punch through.
But really, that a thing I found in Florida too is that the size, weight, when you're talking 1/2 ounce and 1 ounce, doesn't really matter because it's such a reaction bite. It's breaking through there so quick that I don't think you would probably get as many bites on a 1 ounce as you would a 1/2 ounce. But a lot of the stuff that you're pitching in on Dora is hay and it's got holes in it. And the reason I would go to the 1/2 ounce would be especially if I'm utilizing pitching in those little holes, you don't need anything to bust through anything.
And when you're talking hay, you mean the Kissimmee grass, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
And it's the same way with the reeds. There'll be some patches of reeds mixed in that Kissimmee grass, and that's usually more open, than the thicker
That's,
It'll
you
just
know,
have
back in,
Kissimmee grass around it.
yeah,
You know,
back in August, that's what I targeted. I targeted the reeds. There'd be some Kissimmee grass, and then there'd be about a 20-yard, 25-yard stretch of just reeds, and then the Kissimmee grass would continue. And yes, something different, something different. Go ahead,
yeah.
Jason.
Paul, on another note, something about us learning the type of fishing in Florida. I am aware that you fished many of the other lakes there. So before the tournament, we've got a few days where we can get to learn how the chains work. So not just the Harris chain. I know that there's a Kissimmee chaining. There's a few other lakes that work very similar. What body of water would you suggest we can use to get dialed in and understand how the Harris chain works? Because we can't pre-fish there.
We've got 3 days
Yeah.
of practice, a body of water nearby or reasonable
Uh,
distance.
You know, I'm not really sure on that, but I would let's see. You know, to be honest with you guys, I've not been on any lakes in that area that I would know to say go here, but I know there's a lake. I think there's a canal off of Griffin that you used to could get into another lake, but I think it's blocked off now to where you can't get in it. They built a deal that definitely keeps you out of it, so you could probably fish it. And I'm trying to think of the name of that lake, but
Is it called, is that Rodman?
no, it's Yale, Lake Yale.
Okay.
I think it's the Yale. There's a Yale Canal off of Griffin, but you cannot get into Lake Yale anymore. So I would look at that lake because it's going to be similar to what you're going to be looking at on the Harris chain.
Okay, we'll take a look at that.
100%.
And I'm pretty sure you've got experience on the Kissimmee chain. And how similar is the
Griffin? Griffin is another lake that you guys may want to look at. If
Paul, you there? Paul?
yeah, kind of getting a lot of interference.
You're talking about Lake Griffin?
Yeah, it sounded like somebody was talking at the same time I was. I don't know, but it's going to be real important to check the results of this open to find out what lakes are producing. But if Griffin plays a hand in this open, I would say I would spend a day on Griffin because Griffin is a very good lake too. I don't know a lot about it. I know it's going to be more of a hydrilla thing than the other lakes. So, but then again, I think it would still be a chatterbait oriented deal unless you ended up flipping matted hydrilla. But I would definitely pay attention to this open and find out if Griffin is playing a hand in the tournament.
Another question, Paul, is how similar is the Kissimmee? Kissimmee chain versus the the Harris chain.
The Kissimmee chain, I don't think is very similar at all.
Okay.
The only thing that would be similar would be the hay grass. You know,
Gotcha.
that to me that's the only thing that would be similar.
Yeah, I've been told that too. They're both fish different. They both fish really different. So okay. Any other questions, guys?
Thanks.
Nothing I can think of the top of my head. I think the important thing here was just the colors. To understand that you want to go and get dark.
And one other thing you're gonna want to add to your arsenal on Dora is a Carolina rig. They throw a lot of Carolina rigs on that lake, out in front of the hay grass or on the points, finding shell beds. You know, I would definitely drag a Carolina rig around areas that I got bit, you know, on a chatterbait or a square bill. I'd definitely drag a Carolina rig around.
Awesome. That's good. That's good information right there. Good.
Mr. Elias, I don't know how much you use the newer technology that's out on all these boats. We aren't fortunate enough to do much with it. But to what extent do you think the new active imaging is going to play to affect this tournament?
It could play a role around those points and on that. You know, if the fish are in the 7 to 10 foot water, you would definitely it could definitely play a part, because you can see the fish when they're above. You're going to have eelgrass and some hydrilla and coontail, and you're going to fish above that, you know, sitting on the top of that grass and stuff. But once they go down in it, naturally you won't be able to see them. But it could be a factor as far as seeing bait that's around that grass, because Dora's got a little bit deeper water.
Jason, maybe just mute yourself. There's some interference.
And those fish are going to be relating to those. That's what you were saying there, but they would definitely, I think, forward-facing sonar would definitely play a role, unless you're flipping and stuff like that. You know, I think looking for the fish around those outside grass lines and stuff, it would definitely play a role.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, one thing, Paul, that you touched on, you said shell beds. Those are pretty hard to find for somebody that's new on that lake, right?
Well, they would be, but I think dragging the Carolina rig around those points and stuff, you're going to feel those. If there's any shell beds there, you're going to feel them with that Carolina rig.
Gotcha. Okay.
And there's not going to be that many places that have the shell beds. There's you know, between Lake Dora and Beauclair, that little channel that goes between those two lakes, there's a steep drop off in that area. It's gonna have boats on it all the time, but there's definitely shell beds around the edge of that drop. So I'd give you a feel for what you're looking for with that Carolina rig.
Gotcha.
Mr. Elias, when you say throw a square bill, what sort of structure are you looking at on the bank, or what are you looking for when you say, okay, now's the time to pull out square bill?
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand what you said.
Paul, what Calvin said was, when you are cranking the square bill, you're just running the Kissimmee grass, right? You're just running it parallel?
The Kissimmee grass, or really more of the eelgrass
Eelgrass?
in front of the Kissimmee grass. You're trying to kick that square bill and that chatterbait off of that eelgrass. I don't catch many of my fish on Dora on the edge of the hay, because usually there's eelgrass in front of it.
Yeah. So it's not like you're trying to find any or hard surface to bump the Weibel off on the bottom.
The only hard
between.
surface you're going to find is shale beds. Okay.
Got
That's the only,
Got it.
and again, that's limited. You find one of those,
Yeah.
you find one of those, really work it hard. I mean, what I mean by that is check it out, because those are premium.
Okay. And,
What you're going to end up doing, you're going to find stretches with that chatterbait and that square bill where you're getting bit, and you're going to have to keep coming. You're going to have to find you 5 or 6 stretches that are producing, and keep running those 5 or 6 stretches the whole time.
Got it.
All right, we've got a few minutes left, Paul. Buddy Gross won the elites here a couple years ago on the Harris chain, and he was fishing along with a lot of other the elites. Was fishing Long Island there in the on Lake Harris. What's your thoughts about that Long Island area?
If they haven't killed the grass behind that Long Island area, it could be good. It could be real good, but they don't normally leave the hydrilla. Once it's getting thick, they normally kill it. If there's a lot of hydrilla on Harris, it could definitely be a big player. And again, you'll find that out through this open.
By the open,
you'll
yes.
find out if those hydrilla areas are working.
Yes.
Great. All right, we just got a couple 3 minutes, guys. Let's wrap it up with one more question to Paul, and then Paul can maybe give his thoughts on. But we've got we've got 8 minutes left. So go ahead.
Got it.
Paul, I've got one question. Out of all the lakes, which lake are you aware of that has got the most shell beds?
Probably let's see, the lake that you come out of Harris to go into the Door Canal, Eustis, I would say Eustis probably has the most shell beds. I don't think from things I've heard in the past, Eustis has the most shell beds. Now there's shell at the entrance where you come into come out of Harris to go into the Dead River to get to Eustis. There's shell beds on either side of that Dead River. So, but those are usually covered up with boats, but they can be really good. But
Thank you.
and so you could drag, you could set off of those points of that Dead River and drag a Carolina rig around and crank just to get a feel for what you're looking for, the feel that you're looking for, and also look at your sonar, your side scan and your down scan and stuff to see what that looks like. Once you feel some of that shell, I would ride over it with my down scan and side scan and get an idea of what it looks like.
Yes.
Perfect. Calvin?
All good on my side.
Okay. Wonderful. Paul, anything else you want to add? Because we really appreciate your time.
No, that's pretty much it. Good luck to you guys, and just, the thing you want to remember about Florida fishing is that kicker fish is a big deal. So if you can find an area that you've caught, 5+ pound fish in, you really want to look and spend some time in those areas, because, the Harris chain is just like all the rest of the chains in Florida. If you don't catch a kicker fish or 2 kicker fish, you're going to have 5 fish that weigh 8 or 9 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to, kicker fish are real important on those chains.
Awesome. All right. We're going to end it right there. Paul, thank you again for taking time. Calvin, Jason, got some great information today.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. And you're an icon in the sport. It was really great to meet and communicate.
All right, nice meeting you guys again. Get out there and do your best, man. We'll see you.
As always.
Thank you.
Guys, always remember, you're just one cast away. All right. See you later.
Cheers.
Cheers.